Now that we have seen the video describing the loss of your daughter in police custody and describing the unexplained and still in many ways loss of your son, of your oldest son, what is the resounding theme? What ties together the loss? What's the ultimate cause that could lead to losing not one but two children? What could lead to their demise like that?
I think I've mentioned in both interviews the origin and existence of family violence within our family system that the children have been consistently exposed to during the course of their lives. I always say that the two dates representing both their transitions, August 30th for Jason and March the 4th for Aja, are dates that didn't just happen to. Their deaths didn't occur on those dates specifically. Their deaths culminated on those dates, but their deaths occurred long before those dates ever arrived. Their exposure to violence within the family system, consistently, emotional violence, psychological violence, spiritual violence, and economic violence, are factors that put them in the space that they wound up on August 30th for Jason and March 4th for Aja. A space that evoked desecration and dismantlization, which played itself out in the physical sense, but which first occurred in the spiritual realm of their existence. The spiritual sense. Their spirits had been desecrated long before their bodies experienced demise. And so the point that I'm making, that I want to make about domestic violence is domestic violence and family violence affects the spirit of the individual that is victimized by it, and also affects the spirit of the individual that perpetuates it. This is a spiritual problem. It is a problem of spirit. Once the spirit of an individual is desecrated and dismantled, the body follows. So after being exposed to years of desecration spiritually, and years of desecration emotionally, and years of desecration psychologically, and years of desecration financially, then we finally have, on August 30th, when the body can no longer take another day of this horror, the demise of Jason, and then 6 months later, to the day, the demise of Aja. So I want to hit this hard. When we ignore the emotional traumas that our children are exposed to and encounter, we are playing the part of co-conspirator in their demise. When we do not accept responsibility as parents and first teachers to correct those pathologies, to first acknowledge their existence, that they exist, and the man or the woman in the mirror, that we are inflicting this violence upon our children, what we do is we participate in driving the nails in their coffin, because children are helpless agents in these family systems. They don't ask to come here. They don't ask to coexist in those paradigms. They are helpless individuals dependent upon their first teachers for survival, for sustenance, and for their growth and development. They are dependent completely upon us. So when we participate in paradigms that are unhealthy, and that are that lead to our ultimate demise as parents, we are basically giving all the forces that will be pitted against our kids coming from that family system a license to take them out of this world. We have to accept responsibility for the pathology of violence, whether it's verbal, psychological, spiritual, emotional, and financial, as it affects the lives of our children, ourselves as well, but our children. We have, and I have to say it again, we have to accept responsibility. The man, the woman in the mirror who is violent, emotionally, psychologically, verbally, spiritually, which I think is the worst type of violence, because you can't see the wound. My child can ACS will be called to come to my house if my child goes to school with a bruise on their face or their arm or their leg. But, however, if the bruise is internal and no one ever sees it, who's going to provide assistance to the child, especially in the midst of silence and the child returns back to the violent environment? So, sweeping it under the rug, dismissing it, all of that, that has to stop. We have to deal with it. Because the bottom line is this: the chickens may not come home to roost tomorrow or next week or the next hour if you're verbally abusing your child. But one day, they're coming to take their prize. And that prize is your child. You have to stop abusing your child, your children, emotionally, verbally, and psychologically, and spiritually, and financially. Take responsibility, ownership, grow up, and step up. And don't take your cease to take your frustrations out on your kids. They are not responsible for your problems. Solve them and become better parents in the process to save your kids.
One last question. A lot of people hear this and they say, oh, this is terrible, how could this happen? And they're obviously saddened by it. But the question then arises, what can be done about this? What do you want people to know they should do themselves specifically to prevent this?
I think honesty is always the best remedy for any problem. I can't begin to address a problem if I'm first and foremost unwilling to acknowledge its existence. If I go to the doctor and there's something wrong with my heart, and I refuse to divulge all of the things that I may be doing to contribute to this illness, including withholding family history, there's not very much he can do to help me. But if I go and acknowledge that A, B, C, D may be a factor in my life, and maybe I don't know of all the factors, let's do some exploratory work, then perhaps I have a fighting chance for survival. The same applies to domestic violence. When we remain silent, when we remain oblivious to the emotional assaults that we have experienced and encountered as parents, first and foremost, and that we are also and that we now inflict upon our kids and ourselves and each other, we are basically giving this disease the room that it needs to grow and continue its existence onto the second, fourth, fifth, and third generation, into infinitum. We have to break our silence around the theme of domestic violence in whatever form it exists, whatever form. That to me is the beginning of the problem, and the blaming and the pointing the finger has to stop in family systems. Particularly, and I want to say this, and my children were children of the parsonage. We came from a clergy family system. And I want to challenge the church to deal with DV in a way that also exercises honesty and truth. My children were children of pastors. And in my view, that was the worst position for them to be in, because they not only did they have no place to run, but they had no place to hide. If you can't get help outside of the family domain because of the shroud of violence, and you can't get help within it, and then you can't get help within the institution that's supposed to help both entities, where can you go for help? And that is the church. And so the church has to lift the veil. The church has to raise up the shades and open the windows and deal with this pathology as honestly as Christ has called us to. Especially when it affects the least of these, and the least of these are his children. Through the domain of truth. If a pastor is abusing his wife, if a wife is abusing her husband, if they're abusing their children, they have to be called on the carpet for this. They have to be dealt with by the ecclesiastical community they serve. The shades have to go up. Help needs to be provided. Intervention needs to happen. And it has to happen aggressively. And pointing the finger and demonizing the mother or the father is not the answer. The family needs help. Give them the help they need in a very comprehensive, educational, holistic way, so that the children can be spared, because it's the children that pay the biggest price. I'm still here. Their father is still here. They're gone. So we're not the victims, as most would have us believe. We are by no means by any stretch of the imagination, victimized here. They are. They're the victims because they're in the ground. They're in the ground in the prime of their life and in the flower of their life without having the opportunity to reach their destiny or to seize their future.